Hi, I'm John. Welcome back to Underhill Creations and Casting Solutions. I'm in the shop today and I thought now would be a good time to show you how I turn a feather blink. My reason for this is a lot of people are afraid to turn these and I don't know why. Maybe it's because I've turned more of them than most, but I want to show you how easy it is to turn this feather blink into a pen using basic woodworking tools, and we're going to start right now. Okay, so before we get started, one thing I want to point out is this is polyester resin. So it tends to get a little brittle when it gets cold. So the best thing you can do with your feather blinks, snake skins, anything that you know is cast in PR, polyester resin, warm it up. What I do is I put it in my pants pocket, my front pocket, and I walk around the shop for about an hour doing other things. And that way when I decide to turn this, it's warm and it's not 50 degrees sitting on the shelf in a cold shop. So next, we have to mill the ends. Now I've had a lot of people say, oh, only use a disc sander to bump these off. Don't get aggressive with pen mills. So in this video, I'm going to use a pen mill. I'm going to show you how easy it is to do this without any worry. For you guys that don't have a belt sander or a disc sander, you're perfectly fine using a drill press and a pen mill as long as it's sharp enough to cut the resin. Let's get started. Because I don't have a 27/64, I'm using a 10 millimeter, and I'm taking a short 10 millimeter tube from a cigar set and I'm placing it on there, and it fills the gap just fine. I always put a block of wood underneath of it. That way it gives me more room to maneuver. And I always hold the blank with a pair of pliers. I'm going to just lightly ease it down. By using a block of wood to elevate this up, it gives me an opportunity then to remove it quickly without having this stuck inside. And that way I'm not messing up or damaging the edge of the brass tube. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a ream and I'm going to clean out that edge. If you don't have a ream, what you can use is a pair of scissors. Just scrape that burr off that this pen mill will leave on the edge. I'm going to do both ends of the blank. And then I'm going to take some ultra-thin glue boost and I'm going to put on the edge. And I'm going to let that roll around. You notice I'm using the whip tip because I can control the flow of how much gets in there. And basically all I want to do is seal this end, because as you mill this down, you're actually going to cut into the end of these feathers. And you don't want moisture to seep in those and damage the clarity of your blank. So I always seal the end with a little bit of ultra-thin CA. And that will protect everything, kind of stabilize those feather ends, and allow me to wet sand my finished pen blank. Let's take it to the lathe. Alright, we're going to mount this up on our lathe between our bushings. I'm using the turn between center bushings. I'll just snug this up, not too tight, just enough to turn it. Set my tool lathe in here, my rest. And adjust my height. I'm going to start it out with a carbide cutter from Easy Wood to show you can cut this with anything, and we'll finish with a skew. Now your speed, it really all comes down to what you're comfortable with. I've got this about 2500 right now. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start my edge. Because this isn't perfectly round, you're going to get a little bit of a chatter noise, but until you get it perfectly round, then that'll go away. There's a couple ways we can do it. We can spend time just kind of working these edges, or we can go across it. You tighten that up a little more. I don't have my dust collection on because you wouldn't be able to hear me. But I like to get it close before I switch over. And this is a new cutter head, so it cuts really easy. But we can come in here and rake it off if you want, leave a shear edge. I know that might make some of you nervous. As long as we're not pushing into it, we won't have any problems. We can push across it and remove material quick. Now you see when I raked across it, it kind of shattered some of these little chips out. It removed the material very quickly, but it didn't go very deep. You just want to be careful about how often you do that, or the blank that you're using. I'm comfortable with that because I've done a lot of these. So it allows me to move material quicker. I recommend you take the time and just turn this down with nice ribbons. Now I'm going to switch to a skew, and I'm just going to work this down. Raise my tool rest up so that I'm just above center on this blank with my cutter edge. I like to use a larger skew because it allows me to cover more surface. With a small one, I feel like I'd be cutting in more, and I want to just kind of rock it because I like to leave a slight taper. This is a Sierra. Diamond Knurl is what we'll be using from exotic blanks. Now you're hearing that squeal because I've got a really steep grind on this skew. There's not a lot of cutting edge touching it. But it leaves a really nice clean edge when it's done. Another problem with resin is you get all those shavings collecting around the headstock. So that's what we have so far. Fairly smooth. I'm going to run this on the sharpener real quick and we'll head back at it. Don't be afraid to stop and sharpen a tool if you need to during turning. Proper sharpness will definitely make the job easier. You just have to knock all this out of the way. Without my vacuum on, it hangs up a little more. Now I always leave these just over the bushing. I don't knock them all the way down flush because I want to sand this a little bit. Pull this out of the way. And I'm just above bushing. So I know they say it's sandpaper, not shaping paper, but I do like to just finish my ends with a little bit of sandpaper. As long as you don't get the blank too hot. If you get it hot, polyester resin will pull away from the tube and fall right off the blank. So be sure not to get it hot. Work at a slow speed. But I'm going to take some 320 now and we'll sand this down smooth. Let's turn the lathe down to about 1200. That way I can apply pressure to the blank. And not cut into it too quickly. If you sand too high, you're adding too much friction to the surface and your blank will get hot. If you're sanding too low, you'll feel like you are not getting anywhere. So, little experience, little practice, you get the right feel for your technique. Alright, now with wood we would come in here and sand back and forth with the grain. With resin I don't do that, there's no grain, so I'm not concerned about that. I just go on to the next grit. Now we're going to take 400 grit and do the exact same thing. And as I start out applying pressure, and as I finish up with that grit, my pressure decreases so that I'm not pushing into the blank, more I'm just resting against it. That way I minimize leaving any deep scratches. Now we're going to go with 600. Again, I'm going to start applying a little pressure, and after I've made a couple passes, I'm going to decrease my pressure and just kind of let it sit on top. And I should be at my desired thickness now. So now I'll turn the lathe up, and I'll take some extra fine steel wool, and I'll just use moderate pressure. I don't want to press too hard, just enough to remove a little material, and you'll see the blank shine up, and it's just kind of decreasing any scratches that 600 would have left. Now we stop, we can look at it, and if we have any defects, this is when we might want to go over it with some CA and fix it. I don't see any defects in there. I'll go back and forth with the steel wool just so that I get a better visual of it. Now we're ready to micro mesh. First thing I'm going to do is place a towel over the bed of the lathe. I want to protect that from any moisture. I'm using cloth back micro mesh like this, but you use what you're familiar with, whether it be Zona or the pad back or whatever. But I also write the grit numbers on the back, so in case I drop them, I've got them all in the right order. I'm using a dropper bottle of water. I don't use a lot, just enough to keep the micro mesh wet so that I don't burn into my surface. I'm going to turn my lathe down around 1,000. Put just a drop on there and work it back and forth. Because this is polyester resin, it's not urethane resin. Polyester resin is much harder, so you don't have to put a CA finish over it. This resin will polish to a high gloss look all on its own. So if you've ever turned a feather blank, or you plan on it, you don't have to be great at CA finishes because you won't need one. Now because we sealed those feather ends, the end grain so to speak, I'm not worried about moisture wicking in, and I'm not spending a lot of time on each grit. Just back and forth a couple times with moderate pressure, and I'll go through all 9 grits. Alright, now I'm going to take some Yorkshire grit, the micro fine. It works really well on acrylics. And I've just got an old t-shirt here. Nice cotton t-shirt. It's soft. I'm going to just put a little bit on there. And I'm going to start to rub it in. And then I'm going to increase the lathe speed and do the same. I'm applying moderate pressure. And after I go back and forth a few times, I move to a cleaner part of the rag and just kind of wipe it all down. And there's our blank. Now we can take this to the buffer and buff it, or we can just assemble it. It all depends on how you feel your finish is. If you see any radial scratches in there from working the surface, you might want to buff it. So for those of you that are gonna buff, here's how I would do that. I take an old pen mandrel and I put a 7mm tube and a Delrin bushing on it. I slide my blank over the top of that, and then I top it off with another bushing. and a 7mm tube. Now I can hold this in my hand and work the blank without trying to hold this little bit and get my fingers in the way. So works very well. This is a tip I got from my buddy Mark Dreyer. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to charge the buffing wheel. So I'm going to use the Triple E white diamond and then just the cloth. I don't charge it very heavy. And you control the pressure with this too. So if you feel like you don't want it to spin at all, push harder into it. But as you can see, the blank is spinning along with the wheel, but it's still buffing it. And I can spin it manually as well. And that's what we get. Well, that sums it up. Here's our finished pen. As you can see, I didn't do anything special to turn it. I put it on the lathe, I used my usual tools, and I turned it down. The nice thing is it's polyester, so there's no CA required. It comes to a nice high shine on its own. You just have to use a little bit of care in your polishing to make sure you don't leave any scratches that might be visible, but a little bit of buffing will take care of that too. Thanks for joining. I hope you found something useful in here. If you did, please like and subscribe. There'll be more videos coming your way here at Underhill Creations and Casting Solutions. I'm John. Thanks for joining.